Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, January 20th. Could I have a roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Coniff. Here. Salem Derby. Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
JP Kaczynski.
Here.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
Joy Winnie.
Here.
We all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I have a motion for the approval of the minutes of both January 4th and 6th?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion, a second approval of the minutes of the 4th and 6th.
Mr. President, my apologies. Perhaps we should do one
At a
at a
time.
time. So I'll make a motion
Okay.
to approve January 4th.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion for approval of January 4th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions for the 4th? Okay, everybody was here. Okay, motion for minutes approval of January 6th.
So moved.
Second.
A second motion, a second for the approval of the minutes of the 6th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so both pass. Public speak time. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to address the council for something other than, well, we have no public hearings tonight, so anyone from the public would like to speak? Not seeing anyone. Communications from elected officials, boards, and committees. This is something that has come up, was asked, maybe we could, actually, quite honestly, they said slow down a little bit. As far as, I'd like to expand this area for counselors, district counselors, at-large counselors, if they want to make any updates about their precinct, about anything they wanted to say, because sometimes I think I do move over that too quickly. So in the future, I'll take a little more pause, and I won't go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but certainly if any precinct counselor has an announcement they would like to make, or some kind, please, we'll use this time to kind of catch the city update on any precinct news or developments that the counselor thinks the city should be aware of. So at this time, is there anyone who would like to make any comments from either the at-large, Counselor Hayes, Precinct 2?
Hi, I just wanted to say, so the mill project is moving along, and there's always a little bit of confusion about which mill is which. So if you're facing the mills and Eastworks is on your right, I think everybody's really familiar with Eastworks. Moving to the left, there's one building that's kind of all connected, and there's actually a little bit of a roadway in between them, so there's mills behind that as well. So those are Keystone Mill, which is the newest, so that's directly next to Eastworks, and then behind that is called the Brickyard, or the Big Brick Building, and that is on the other side of where that tunnel is in between the two buildings. There's also 142R Pleasant, and then Paragon is in front, and then next to that is Mill 180. So those are all the different buildings that encompass the mill project.
Okay. And all of them will benefit from the improvements that are going on and back?
Absolutely, yeah. But they're all very different buildings. I know people have some confusion on like which is which and who is where, but
Right. Okay, thank
yeah,
you.
so those are the 5.
Excuse me, can I,
Yep.
is part of that improvement going to include lighting all in the back for the parking lots and stuff?
The parking lots are going to be lit, that's my understanding, and the city has also moved CPA funds to the Manhattan Rail Trail to light the rail trail from Ferry Street to Union Street
Okay,
eventually, so
great.
the spring's going to be really different back there.
That'll be great.
As we're having this very first discussion, it is crossing my mind that we do have to be careful about open meeting laws in the future. So if there's, it may be more of just an announcement and less discussion, just because if we have a quorum and we talk about something that could be coming from the council, we could become in violation, so something to be aware of. But I think it's good to, obviously, to offer councilors the opportunity to update the council and the city about what's going on in their precinct.
And I actually have one thing to add. The bike path behind the mills is closed until spring.
Yeah.
Okay. Bike path
Because of all
closes-
the work that's going
Okay,
on.
terrific.
Thank you, Barbara.
Councilor
Quick
Kuzinski.
Been in East Hampton a long time, and when I look at the mills from Pleasant Street, okay, I have a view from Pleasant Street, and Councilor Hayes explained what that view is. And when you look at from the bike path, that's a different view of the mills. Riding the bike with the bike path, got into riding this summer, and found myself on the bike path, and the bike path was closed. Okay, so what are we gonna do? We're gonna go up through the mills? What a beautiful tunnel and area between, I didn't know there were two separate buildings there.
Yeah.
On, you know, as you described, one facing the pond and one facing Pleasant Street, and then a huge break in between the tunnels. And you're bringing this up to the council makes me think maybe there's some way we could talk about the types of businesses that are in there and the types of any way that we could support these businesses in our community, because I'm not sure people really understand all that's in there. So just to bring that out on the table, I appreciate your mentioning what.
Yeah, I figured that would be next, because obviously, I mean, I live in that area, so I hear a lot and I see a lot about all the different businesses that are going in, and there's some really unique stuff. Like, there's this hydroponic plant that's doing amazing things, and yeah, it's really unique.
Right. Okay.
And it's a great place to ride your bike
Yeah,
since
so
the bike
so I
path is
hear.
closed,
So
if you
I
happen to
hear.
be out there.
Right. Any additional comments from the elected officials, communications? No? We have no correspondence, so we can move right to mayor communications. Mayor Cadger? Nothing. Do we have any councilors have any questions for the mayor? It's always our opportunity as well. No? Okay. Moving on to standing committees, Rules of Government Relations, Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to move 2 new items of business to the Rules Committee. I'd like to move the request from Councilor Hayes to review wording of Council Rule 6F, and another request from Councilor Hayes to define the scope and create mission statements for subcommittees to the Rules Committee for review.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion, a second. I was just discussing this with the clerk. We might make a motion to have that move to all the subcommittees, because that way ordinance can do, instead of you having to take it on yourself. Do you-
Well, I would like to discuss it first, and
Okay.
then we would
Okay.
probably ask the subcommittees to write
Okay, so you move it
something.
to them from there. Okay, so we have a motion, a second to move both those items to rules and regulations. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes.
As you requested, I would announce that I am indeed still the chair of rules, and Councilor Winnie has graciously stepped in as the clerk for Rules of Government Relations. And we will be meeting on the 28th at 6 p.m. in Room 1 to discuss all of the items on our agenda. And that concludes.
Great, thank you. Finance, Councilor Rist.
I'm going to make a request that we skip over me in the future and then come back to me. Anyway, our next meeting will be the 27th at 5 p.m. In Room 1, at which time we will continue to discuss the retirement board issue, and we will also discuss the city council budget. Although I want to ask, is the clerk available for that?
Yes.
Okay, then that will be on the agenda. Also, I am the chair of finance, and Councilor Coniff has agreed to do the clerk. We thank her for that. I would like to make a motion. I've put in a request because we saw a little hole in the retirement board request. It should be a separate council review of the stipends for the auditor and finance director. So I'd like to request that that be moved to finance for review.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second to move the review of the retirement board stipends for auditor and finance director. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I would also like to bring forward 2 items which we have discussed and passed. They do not require public hearings. First is the cable franchising fee, Chapter 44, Section 53F. The auditor, Val Bernier, explained that there is a new state legislation regarding PEG access accounts, and this is basically to clean up accounting. The DOR wants us to do this. So if we set up a revolving account, we can continue to control the way the funding is used. Right now, the cable franchise fees are put into a grants funding account. The new legislation allows the city to establish special fund to reserve the franchise fees and other cable-related revenues for appropriation. If we don't do this, the DOR will close our other account, and the auditor would prefer that we have this money in an account that they approve. So this is really, I would call it house cleaning for our auditor. So since this is not a public hearing, I'll just make a motion to accept this because we still have discussion amongst the councilors. I therefore move to accept MGL Chapter 44, Section 53F 3/4.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept section, chapter 44, section 53, F and 3/4. It's like Hogwarts here. Any additional comments? I
Committee
did-
voted 2-0 to accept this.
Okay, the other thing that came to my mind too, because I was there for the discussions, I think one of the flexibility of this is the way it is now, any excess money gets rolled into free cash. This way, if it's, as I understand, if it's line, this way it's being structured, that money can then save in that account and automatically move back into, for the local cable access versus having to be pulled out of free cash again.
Almost like a revolving account type of thing?
Set up a revolving
Like,
account. This is
yeah,
what we're doing.
it's a setting, okay. a
Mr.
revolving
President, I
account.
want to apologize.
Okay, I got it.
And remove the motion from the table if the second could be removed in case, I won't make this motion to remove in case the finance director would like to speak to this issue, as I should have allowed that. I can't see her. Does anybody have questions? Otherwise,
I would love to hear it from.
all right, so therefore I would like to remove the motion from the table
Move the second.
Okay,
Motion.
okay, I'll.
and ask the finance director to answer the question.
Melissa, it's a revolving account? Okay.
JP, Counselor Kwasinski.
And the advantage to the city again
It's
of doing it this way?
essentially the same way it works right now, except that the states created special legislation for cable company, for local access. Therefore, in order to comply with the special new rule about revolving funds for cable access, we're creating a revolving fund for cable access instead of the revolving fund we have now, because they changed the rules, i.e. the request from the auditor.
Am I correct that it also, the free cash, am I correct on that? That otherwise it would roll into free cash?
Currently, I believe, already is in a revolving account established by the committee prior to now, was it several years ago. However, the rules have changed, and they want us to do their new special specific to cable access revolving account versus the one that we have now. And they would, if we didn't do it the new way, then they would have us close it, and if they had us close it, it would go to free cash. But that's not the way it's established currently.
Counselor Winnie?
So just a little clarification. I don't know if anybody knows how revolving accounts work, or do you all? So you're all set? Okay, all right, just, yeah.
Any additional, Counselor, Mayor Cadger.
You know, just for a little bit further clarity, there's currently 2 accounts. One is a capital and one is PEG access.
And this doesn't affect the capital account for anybody's information. This is only the grant funded account, which is being changed.
Okay, so we got our additional input.
All
We'll
right,
go
if
back to
there's
you
no
again,
more
Counselor Riss.
questions for officers, since I read the motion incorrectly according to Barbara, I will read the correct one. I move that the City of East Hampton accept MGL Chapter 44, Section 53F 3/4, which allows for the establishment of a separate revenue fund to be known as the PEG Access and Cable-Related Fund.
Second.
Okay, so we now have a motion and a second for the, creating the Section 53F and 3/4 cable franchising fee account. Additional discussion or comments on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain. Motion passes.
Question.
Oh, Counselor
Do we
Winnie.
need to move the funds
No.
through the city, or it's just
Yeah, I
going to be
think it's
moved over?
already-
Okay,
that's
okay,
just
okay,
counted.
all right.
The second item that we did follow through on is the request to rescind the EHS construction borrowing. As you recall, we gave the city authorization to borrow $43 million. We never ended up borrowing all of that, but the state had wanted us to have that authority in place, even though they eventually gave us something like 63% of that amount as a, well, I guess you could call it a refund, because they supported 60% of the construction. So we are required to, well, this finance director and the mayor are asking us to remove this authorization, basically because we're done and we don't need it anymore and it's on the book. So this again is house cleaning. And before I make a motion, I'll ask if the mayor or the finance director wants to speak to this. Anybody have questions?
Questions for either?
This
of
is
them?
pretty simple.
Okay.
I move to rescind the following borrowing authorization as the project is complete and no additional borrowing is needed. The East Hampton High School construction, $27,191,108.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to rescind the East Hampton High School construction borrowing. Any additional comments, questions?
I have a question for the clerk. We were originally authorized 43 million. Why did you put 27 here? I don't recall.
That's the amount that is left.
Okay, I'm gonna remove the motion from the table. I think that should have said 43 million.
No, that's, no,
Remove
this
the
is all
second.
that's left.
You rescinded 43 million.
So that's correct.
Yeah.
All right. The motion's okay. She waved, nodded her head, so the motion stands. Sorry.
Okay, I believe there was a motion and a
Yeah.
second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
I would like to request that the council set a public hearing for the next meeting at 6:15 in these chambers for the retirement board to accept MGL provisions regarding stipends. That agenda item, although it does not require a public hearing, I would like to be able to allow retirees and board members to speak to it directly. It's a pretty important issue. So I'd like to request that in the form of a motion that we set a public hearing.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to set a public hearing for the request to accept MGL provisions for stipends for that board. Again, that will be February 3rd, 6:15 PM in these chambers. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President. That concludes.
Actually, did you want to, I just looked at it, just an extension on kennel donation?
Oh, I suppose. That's been there since August 19th. We did ask the mayor about that, so the council is aware. She is still working on that with the city attorney, which it has to deal with how those funds can be moved. So I will make a motion to extend that for 90 days.
Second.
Motion and a second for 90-day extension concerning the kennel donation account. Additional questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. President, for catching that. That concludes.
Okay, thank you. Public Safety, Councilor Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our board now consists of myself, Counselor Carey, and Counselor Derby. I will be continuing as chair, and Counselor Carey will be clerking for Public Safety. Our next meeting is going to be sometime next week. We're still waiting on some feedback for Counselor Derby. We are continuing with the street acceptance protocol. We are also continuing with the Paul Street extension. And we are also moving forward with the request to allow on-street parking on a section of Pleasant Street. I'd like to request a 30-day extension for the Paul Street extension. I don't think we're going to need it, but I just want to be careful. So,
Motion and
you.
second for a 30-day extension on the Paul Street extension, street acceptance. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Thus concludes.
Thank you. Appointments, Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met today at 5 o'clock, and first order of business, we have a new, a new setup. Can't think of the word I'm trying to say, but I'm the chair, and Joe McCoy is going to be the clerk for the appointments committee. So today we have 4 mayoral appointments that I'd like to bring to full council to be considered. And I'd like to make these 4 mayoral appointments in the form of a motion, 4 separate motions. So the first one is for Corey Boyle to be appointed to the Commission on Disability for a term expiration of December 31st, 2018.
Second.
Here we have motion and a second for appointment of Corey Boyle, Commission on Disability, expiration 12/31/18. Any additional comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Okay, the second appointment is Randy Buchanan for the Commission on Disability with a term expiration of December 31st, 2018.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second for appointment of Randy Buchanan to Commission on Disability, 12/31/18. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Okay, and the third appointment is for Scott Kavanaugh to the CBA committee. This is a mayoral appointment. There are several different types of appointments within the CPA committee. This is a term expiration of December 31st, 2017.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to accept Scott Kavanaugh, the CPA, as the mayoral appointment. this came up during the appointments committee, that we had 3 applicants for 2 positions. And last week, we passed my city council president appointment. This is the mayoral appointment. Came very impressively qualified, actually worked on establishing the CPA in Cambridge. He was actually on the committee that created it. So I think a really good addition to our committee. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes.
And the 4th appointment is for Daniel Carey to the School Building Committee with a term expiration of December 31st, 2018.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, for Dan Carey to the School Building Committee. And again, his name came up during the committee. What a great combination, as he is serving on finance and was on school committee, so I think he'd be a perfect fit for the School Building Committee. Any additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain. Let's see why I can't
He
vote.
does it. He does it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Another thing that we did at tonight's meeting was that we formally met with Mayor Cadger about the application form for different boards and committees. And that application form can be found online, and it can also be found within the city clerk's office. We discussed the role of the form in the application and decided to recommend to the mayor that we include an additional line on the form about what type of, how the person actually heard about the openings, so that we can keep better tracking on how people are finding out about the openings on our different appointments and our different commissions and boards. So the last thing that we started to discuss today was a description of the duties and roles of the appointment subcommittee, but we'll hold off on completing that until that goes through the formal channels of rules and regulations, if I understood that correctly. Is that right, Dan?
Yes, but it's okay if you want to get a head start, because I believe the committee will just discuss the need, and it sounds like a good idea to me personally, so if the committees want to get started writing them. Rules of Government Relations actually has that in the rule book, so
Right.
look at that for an example.
Some of them are missing. And I think there's maybe 2, like, I don't know what was submitted tonight to rules and regulations are city council subcommittees. There's a lot of absence of what does appointments do? What does,
Right.
some of them are there. And then what I think the appointments was looking at is, what does the Conservation Commission do? What does, some of those other boards and committees do? But, so on all levels, we want to increase information about what the functions are.
Just as a matter of form, Mr. President, if we want boards and committees that are appointed by the mayor to give us those things, the council could probably make a motion to request the mayor ask them to do so, but we can't ask them.
She's ahead of the ball. She's already done it. So-
Thank you.
That letter has gone out, so hopefully we'll get feedback from the boards and committees. I think they're best probably to put together what they view their mission statement and their responsibilities are. So,
And one last thing, as I'm ending my report, I just wanted to thank Joy Winnie, who has been the previous chair of the Appointments Committee for several terms, and I really appreciate your mentorship in this and passing of the
Absolutely.
baton. So
Not a
thank you.
problem. You're welcome. Not a problem.
So that concludes.
thank you. Ordinance, Counselor Kwasinski.
There are 3 members on the ordinance committee. Salem Derby was elected chair. I agreed to serve as clerk, and Councilor Smith is also on the committee. There are 2 items before the ordinance committee: the review of zoning ordinance section 10, signs for inconsistencies, and a request to consider creating a food truck ordinance. At this time, we do not have any scheduled meetings, but stay tuned.
Okay, thank you. Property, Counselor Kwasinski.
The Property Committee consists of Counselor Coniff, Counselor Hayes, and myself. I am the chair, and Counselor Coniff has kindly agreed to clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Old business, we do still have the naming citizen petition for Boardwalk. So again, if there are some people out there who would like to participate in that Boardwalk naming discussion, please forward your information either to myself or the mayor. We've gone through new business, so that's been moved. So at this point, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. See you February 3rd.